In 1944, Nelson Mandela's life took a decisive turn. Together with his close friends Oliver Tambo and Walter Sisulu, he co-founded the African National Congress Youth League, a movement dedicated to breathing new life into the struggle for freedom. The ANC itself had existed since 1912, but by the 1940s it had grown cautious, its leadership preferring petitions and appeals to the government. Mandela and his peers wanted action. They were young, impatient, and determined to shake the foundations of oppression. South Africa at this time was tightening the chains of racial segregation. Laws dictated where black people could live, work, and travel. They were denied the right to vote, to own land in many areas, and even to move freely without government-issued passes. The system of apartheid, though not yet fully formalized, was already suffocating daily life. Mandela, now a lawyer in Johannesburg, was thrust into the heart of these injustices. He and Oliver Tambo established the first black law firm in South Africa, Mandela and Tambo Attorneys. Their office quickly became a refuge for the poor and dispossessed. Clients lined up outside, seeking help against eviction notices, police harassment, and the humiliating pass laws. For many, Mandela was more than a lawyer. He was a defender of dignity. The Youth League, meanwhile, was pushing the ANC toward a new vision of resistance. They drafted the 1949 Program of Action, calling for boycotts, strikes, and civil disobedience. The young Mandela was at the forefront, advocating a bolder, more confrontational path. The 1950s became a decade of defiance. Across the country, people rose in protest against unjust laws. Mandela helped organize the Defiance Campaign of 1952, the first large-scale multiracial movement against apartheid. Volunteers deliberately broke apartheid laws, entering whites-only areas, refusing to carry passes, and marching in defiance of curfews. Thousands were arrested, including Mandela himself. Though sentenced to a suspended prison term, Mandela's stature only grew. He was soon elected as one of the deputy presidents of the ANC. For the first time, he wore the mantle of national leadership. But activism came at a cost. The government banned Mandela from attending public gatherings. He could not leave Johannesburg without permission. Police followed him, tapped his phones, and harassed his family. Yet restrictions only sharpened his creativity. Mandela developed what he called the M Plan, a strategy of dividing the ANC into small cells to survive government crackdowns. In 1955, Mandela stood among thousands in a dusty field in Kliptown as the Freedom Charter was adopted. This visionary document declared South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. It demanded democracy, equality, and justice, values that directly challenged the apartheid state. For the government, this was treason. In 1956, Mandela and 156 other activists were arrested in what became known as the treason trial. The proceedings dragged on for 4 years, with Mandela facing the constant threat of life imprisonment or even death. But Mandela did not falter. In the courtroom, he turned defense into defiance, using the trial as a platform to speak against apartheid. Ultimately, the state failed to prove its case, and all the accused were acquitted.
Outside the courtroom, however, the situation was deteriorating. The government grew more ruthless, responding to peaceful protest with bullets and batons. The 1960 Sharpeville massacre, in which police opened fire on unarmed protesters, killing 69 and wounding hundreds, shocked the world. For Mandela, it was a turning point. He had dedicated years to peaceful resistance, but the bloodshed at Sharpeville convinced Mandela that the apartheid regime would never yield through nonviolent protest alone. A new phase of the struggle was dawning, one that would test Mandela's resolve in ways he could not yet imagine. The rising activist was about to become a revolutionary.
In the summer of 1918, in a small rural village on the banks of the Mbashe River in South Africa's Eastern Cape, a boy was born who would one day capture the imagination of the world. His name was Rolihlahla Mandela, a Xhosa name that meant pulling the branch of a tree, or more colloquially, troublemaker. This boy would grow into a man who defied one of the most oppressive political systems of the 20th century, endured decades behind bars, and emerged not with vengeance, but with forgiveness. To millions, he would become Madiba, a clan name that symbolized respect, wisdom, and fatherhood. To history, he would forever be Nelson Mandela. Mandela's beginnings were humble. His father, Godla Henry Kgo'in-Phakanyiswa, was a local chief and counselor to the Tembu royal family. His mother, Nosekeni Fanny, raised him in the rolling green hills of the Transkei, where cattle grazed freely and tradition guided daily life. Mandela grew up surrounded by the oral histories of his people, stories of African warriors who had resisted colonial rule, tales of bravery passed down from one generation to the next. As a child, he lived a simple life, tending sheep and cattle, running barefoot along dusty paths, and swimming in the nearby rivers. Yet even then, there was something in him that set him apart, a quiet determination, a sense of dignity, a curiosity about the wider world beyond his village. At the age of 7, Mandela became the first in his family to attend school. It was here that he was given the English name Nelson by a Methodist teacher, a common practice under British colonial education. It was a small act, but one that symbolized the larger forces shaping his life, a clash between African traditions and European colonial rule. Tragedy struck when Mandela's father died of illness. At just 12 years old, he was sent to live with the regent of the Tembu people, Chief Jongin Taba Dalindyebo, in the royal palace at Mkhekezweni. Under Jongin Taba's guardianship, Mandela was exposed to leadership, decision-making, and the politics of his people. He listened attentively to tribal council meetings, where disputes were resolved not through force, but through dialogue and consensus. These early lessons would leave a deep imprint on his leadership style. As a teenager, Mandela dreamed not of politics, but of becoming a lawyer or advisor to the royal household. He was disciplined, respectful, and carried himself with quiet confidence. At initiation ceremonies, he learned the responsibilities of manhood in Xhosa culture, the importance of courage, honor, and service to the community. His formal education took him first to Healdtown, a Wesleyan secondary school, and later to the prestigious University of Fort Hare, one of the few institutions that admitted Black South Africans. Fort Hare was a crucible of ideas, producing many future African leaders. Here, Mandela encountered students who were outspoken about colonialism, inequality, and self-determination. He joined in debates, testing his own voice against theirs. But Mandela's time at Fort Hare was cut short. Alongside his friend Oliver Tambo, he participated in a student protest against the university's policies. As punishment, he was expelled. It was an early sign of his willingness to challenge authority in the name of principle. Returning home, Mandela found himself at odds with Jongintaba, who had arranged a marriage for him. Refusing to accept a life chosen for him, Mandela fled to Johannesburg. There he worked as a mine security guard, and later as a clerk, living modestly while finishing his studies. Johannesburg in the 1940s was a city of stark contrasts. For whites, it was a place of opportunity and wealth, fueled by gold and industry. For Black South Africans, it was a place of struggle. Pass laws restricted their movements, poverty was rampant, and police harassment was constant. It was here, in the bustling, divided heart of South Africa, that Nelson Mandela's political awakening truly began. He enrolled at the University of Witwatersrand, one of the few Black students in a predominantly white institution. There he studied law, facing discrimination daily, yet building friendships across racial lines. These experiences hardened his resolve. By the end of his studies, Mandela was no longer just the boy from Veso or the royal ward from Nhekezweni. He was a man stepping on to the stage of history, ready to confront an unjust system and demand freedom for his people. The young troublemaker was now becoming a leader.